And good morning. How's everybody doing today? It's good to see you. Uh-oh. Things look a little bit weird on my broadcast this morning. I'm not sure what's going on. Does everybody see me? Hopefully you do. Dude, what is going on with my broadcast today? All right, if you're out there in the audience, go ahead and type me a quick chat. Okay, so you can see me. Everything's going all right? All right, good deal. My internet is lagging today. I had some problems with my first class, so I'm all freaked out. Okay, good deal. Good morning, Nicole. Good morning, Shamay. Good morning, Victory. It's good to see everybody. What a great class we got going on. Looks like we have several people here already. Thanks for coming. So we are on chapter 10 this week, and I believe, I'm not sure. Let me double check real quick. I think this is the last chapter, last week, that we're only going to be covering one chapter. Starting next week, we're going to be covering 2 chapters a week. So we're really going to start speeding things up and getting through there, kicking butt. We're going to have to stay focused for the rest of the semester. So to take her home, so I may not be here for the entire. Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that, Nicole. I hope she's okay. Since you're going to take her home and it's outpatient, hopefully that means it's not too serious. But give your mother my regards when she is able to hear that. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Okay, so if you remember, we are in middle and late childhood, from the time you go to start school until around when puberty begins. And we are talking about socio-emotional processes during middle and late childhood. So we're going to talk about socio-emotional development during elementary school. Changes in emotional functioning. So you should be getting more emotionally mature during this stage, starting 5 to 6. Man, your kid, if you were training and help and not being an emotionally dismissive person, if you were being an emotionally, if you actually were help train your child's emotional abilities, you're going to notice that by now they're going to have a more complex sense of emotional understanding. I have this term, emotional mental time travel. This is to go back and remember how you were feeling, or to imagine how you're going to feel in the future, to displace your actual emotional functioning. At this point, this is going to allow you to predict what kinds of situations you should be involved in, what kinds of situations you shouldn't be involved in, to learn from past emotional experiences. So by now, your child's learned to project their emotions forward and backward, and use that information to help them monitor their emotions. And like I said, if you were coaching their emotions, they should have this ability by now. They're going to understand starting at age 5 or 6. They're not going to start to understand, but they should already understand that people can have more than one emotion in a particular situation. And they're actually going to notice that sometimes different people can have different emotions about the same event. They're going to understand what kinds of things cause people to have emotions. What makes mommy and daddy mad? What makes my brother mad? They're going to understand that. They should know how to suppress or conceal negative emotional states. Now, what I mean here is that you don't hide your emotions, but you know now is not the appropriate time to throw a temper tantrum. Okay? When somebody's having a sad situation, now is not the time to start laughing. They're going to be able to understand that there are occasions when you need to control your emotions. And hopefully, if you've been an emotionally coaching parent, this child will be able to start to affect their own emotional functioning by redirecting their feelings. They're going to know how to self-soothe right now. Self-soothe. That is, when something makes me angry, I don't need my wife to come and pet me on the head and say, "It's going to be okay, Chris. although I do like that occasionally. I should be able to control my own emotions. And starting around 5 or 6, man, your kids should start to have these mature abilities. Now, children that don't have good emotional control are not going to make good students. If you get in there with 30 other people and you can't control your emotions, it's going to cause problem in school, and some school related problems, some things that school counselors find out. We talked about learning disorders. One type of learning disorder is not being able to control your emotional self while you're in school. So it is very important that your child have these skills before you send them off to school. And as I said down here, the capacity for genuine empathy, for understanding what's going on in other people's situations. Now, I think you wanted, Bruce job from a car wreck. Okay, good enough. Couple I see in the chat bar. I'm going to say hello, Ronnie. Good to see you, and I'm glad that it's a minor surgery, Nicole. Fantastic. Now, here's the deal. Erickson, stage 4. If you remember, we've been talking about Erik Erikson. I suggested to you that that he argued that our personality develops because every important period of life, we have to solve a crisis. We have to learn an important lesson about life. If you remember, I talked about some of these stages earlier this semester. The first year of your life, you have to learn to trust the world and develop a sense of hope. The second and third years, you have to have the confidence to wander away from your parents, but the good sense to know when to come back, right? During your preschool periods, you have to develop the confidence to take a chance, to do something, to try something new. And so the first 5 years of your life, you can develop these personality virtues, these strong personality traits that will help you as an adult. You can develop a sense of hope, a sense of willpower, a sense of purpose. Now, once we get into school and you start getting evaluated by the world, you have to learn a sense of competence, how to be good at something. So your social relations move outside the family. You're now outside the family. You're at school. You're with 30 other students. You're having to turn stuff into a teacher, and the teacher may like what you did and may not like what you did. You have to learn the difference between doing something well and doing something poorly. Now, you have to develop a sense of industry. You have to develop the drive to do something until you do it right. That's a sense of industry. But on the other hand, you also have to learn how to be able to deal with it when somebody says, you know what, you didn't quite do it right this time. Now, how can we screw this up? If everybody gives you nothing but negative feedback, and if everything you do is seen as poor and not good, and people laugh at your stuff, you're going to develop a sense of inferiority. On the other hand, some parents make the mistake by moving their kids away from things where their kids don't do well. Well, little Johnny wasn't very good at basketball, so he sat on the bench all season last season. So now I'm only going to have him play soccer because he's the best soccer player. And so little Johnny doesn't learn how to suck at something, how to work at something, and how to get better at something, right? Now, in order to develop feelings of competence, you have to learn how to be able to work hard enough to do something well, but you still have to learn how not to be afraid of something that you're not necessarily good at. All right? And so during this age, from the time you get to school until puberty, this age, you've now moved outside of your family to the real world for the first time. Kindergarten, not the real world, but you know what I mean. The external world, and you are now getting feedback, right? So here's the deal. Just a general overview of this stage. You should have learned to control your emotions by now. And this is the period from 5 to 10 when we are going to learn how to take negative feedback and make ourselves into better people. Okay? So, no. Self-understanding. I actually have a question on this week's homework assignment where I ask you to trace the understanding of self through this period, and I want you to compare your self-understanding in this age from your self-understanding as a 2 and 3-year-old and from your self-understanding as an infant. Now, and so I want you to write this as an essay question. It's worth 25 points on your homework. So it's something that I want to be complete and fairly thoughtful. You need to go back and look at, I think it's chapters 4, chapter 6, and oh my goodness. Hold on real quick. I'll tell you what chapters. Some people have already done their homework and didn't do as well because they didn't follow this, but I'm going to, let me see if I can look at this question. Edit the test. I'm going to look at this. Yeah, you need to go to PowerPoint 6A, PowerPoint 8A, and this PowerPoint right here. What I want you to understand over the course of this semester is to understand how personality evolves as we get older. Remember, this is a developmental class. So if you remember from 0 to 2, you don't even really know yourself as a self. You don't have self-awareness. You look in the mirror, you're not sure who you're looking at. That's fine. From 2 to 5, you have a sense of self that's very, very concrete, very, very simple, and very, very positive, and doesn't include social relationships. You haven't really learned how to be a part of a social group yet. And you also, if you'll go back and look at PowerPoint 8, you're going to see that you're not very logical. So your self is not going to be based on objective feedback. Yourself from 5 to 9 is now going to be all of that stuff. You're going to know who you are. You're going to have a sense of logical ability now, so you're going to be able to evaluate yourself more accurately now. And more importantly, you are now going to be a more social creature with friends and enemies, and you're going to know how you compare to your cohort of people. So, children during this age move from a more concrete, isolated self-description in early childhood to one that involves psychological and social components in middle and late childhood. So at 3 or 4, if I ask you who you are, you're going to tell me that you can run fast and you have a dolly, and that and you play really well. You're going to tell me that stuff. As you move in your 7 and 8, yes, exactly, learning how to lose. You're going to start describing yourself in terms of your social relationships. You're going to start describing yourself in how you feel and how confident you are about yourself. And you're going to incorporate your social relations into your self-description. Yes, no problem. I was hoping people would wait till this lecture to do that, but some people want to do their homework early, and the grades so far on that part of the assignment have been pretty low because I am looking for you to hit that. So I've had a couple of zeros on that question, so I'm glad you're here to listen to that. Okay, exactly. And I like Ronique is commenting on what I talked about with this industry versus inferiority. You're right, Ronique. You got to learn how it feels to lose so you can learn how to work hard to be motivated to win. Yeah, learning how to win is great, but you also have to learn how to lose, because that will teach you how to win and be successful. Absolutely. And the weird thing, Ronique, is you'd be surprised how many people are so afraid of losing that they won't try anything as an adult, right? Most adults are afraid of learning anything new because they don't want to suck at it. They don't want to have people laugh at them. You know, I'm actually learning Spanish right now. I've been learning it for the last year. I am absolutely horrible and you would laugh at me. But dadgummit, I know I can do it and I'm okay with sucking at it for a couple of years because I know one day I'll get good at it, right? So our self-description, and so that's industry versus inferiority. But yes, I want you to appreciate this change, Imani. So yourself is evolving. Your ability to think about yourself is really blossoming. From 0 to 2, you didn't even have a sense of self. From 2 to 5, your sense of self was very concrete, not based in reality. Now, my friends, school is here in reality, and the importance of psychological, emotional functioning is going to figure into your description of who you are. Now, children at this age are also learning how to take perspective. If you remember, we talked about false beliefs as being the ability to understand false beliefs developing in early childhood. If you show the child the crayon box filled with pencils and ask them what other people are going to say, the little 2-year-old child will say everybody's going to think it's pencils because that child saw in the crayon box and thinks that everybody knows what they know. As you move through 3 and 4, you're going to understand that other people can be mistaken. Other people can be fooled. And that's the beginnings of this thing we'll call empathy. The ability to take other people's perspectives. Now, by the time you get into middle and late childhood, the kid is going to understand not only what it's like to feel like to be me, but you're going to understand what it feels like to be other people as well. And so this is sort of one of those executive functioning skills that we talked about. Remember, controlling your impulses, controlling your emotions, planning for behaviors, being able to understand how other people feel. This is an executive functioning, right? This takes cognitive flexibility. This takes the ability of controlling your own emotions so you can understand how somebody else might be feeling. Children from 5 to 8 begin to other people have other perspectives because they may not have access to information. You may be wrong. You may be misled. And so this all is what we talked about a couple weeks ago, and it all falls under this idea of theory of mind. Everybody knows how minds work, okay? And so in that ability, that understanding how minds work begins to evolve starting in early childhood. And now I would say we all have what we would call a mature theory of mind, understanding what it feels like to be other people and what it feels like to be us. Now, what you're going to find is that some children at this age aren't really good at understanding other people's perspectives. This is going to lead to poorer peer relationships and more oppositional behavior is fighting and causing trouble. Inability to take other people's perspectives is going to make you start to become that combative person. And this is going to ruin your ability to have friendships in middle school. Friendships in school, in middle childhoods, which is school, beginning in school. And so what you're going to see is that some children who haven't developed this emotional control, who haven't been coached and haven't developed the ability to take other people's perspective, they're going to have trouble when they get to school making friends. And making friends is one of the most important skills that you can have in life. And so you really, really need to coach your children up from 2 to 5. You really want them to develop a sense of emotional control. You really want them to be able to stop, control their own emotions, step outside themselves, and see what it feels like to be somebody else. Because this is a crucial skill in developing friends in early and middle childhood, right? Nothing tried, nothing done. Preach, baby. If you're not willing to risk failure, you will never taste the sweet taste of success. Absolutely, Ron Reed. Now, let's talk a little bit about self-esteem and self-concept. Now, self-concept, check it out. I just learned that in Spanish. Autoconcepto is Spanish for self-concept. Self-concept is your domain-specific evaluations of the self. Am I a good athlete? Am I a good writer? Am I a good artist? Am I a nice person? This is your self-concept, your very specific evaluations of yourself. And if you ask your 5 and 6-year-old and 7-year-old kid, they may tell you that they're good at math, that they're good at sports, they're good at football, and they're going to be able to tell you what they're good at and what they're not good at, okay? That's called your self-concept. Now, your self-esteem is just your general overall view of yourself. Am I in general a good person or not a good person? Do I like myself or do I not like myself? Your self-esteem is sort of like your opinion, your attitude of yourself, and your autoconcepto, your self-concept, is your evaluations of your abilities in specific areas, right? Now, these self-definitional beliefs about the self, your self-concept, as well as your self-esteem, are a product of the quality of your parent-child relationship. Knowing that your parents care about you and having an attachment to them, having parents that treat you nicely, the presence, surprisingly enough, of a father, having economic well-being, all of these things are going to cause you to feel better about yourself and to have a higher self-esteem and a better formed self-concept. So when you're raising your child, why is that attachment important? We talked about infant attachment. Why does it matter? It's going to matter throughout life. One of the areas in which it matters is it's going to help your little 4 and 5-year-old feel good about themselves and have a strong concept as they move into school. Now, once you move into school and you start getting positive feedback and negative feedback, you need to have a strong self-concept. Ronique, even though I am good at taking criticism, it still doesn't feel good. Nobody likes negative feedback. Nobody likes to fail a test or make a D. But if you've got that confidence, you can withstand these negative events that are going to hit you and bounce you around, right? Now, children with high self-esteem, exactly, it lasts throughout your life. Good point, Ronique, always a good point. Now, here's the thing. Self-esteem is not super duper important in determining your school performance. Self-esteem isn't going to turn that F student into an A student, okay? Now, sometimes high self-esteem there's a difference between self-concept and self-esteem. Self-esteem is just, I like myself, I'm awesome. Self-concept is, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I'm not great at this, I'm not great at this. Your self-concept a lot of times is going to be a little more realistic than your self-esteem, which is a lot of times overinflated. So sometimes people with too high self-esteem can not read their own performance accurately and can have distorted beliefs about their abilities. So we want to have a good sense of self, but you don't want to have an overinflated ego, right? Now, although self-esteem doesn't necessarily make you a good student, it does inoculate you to try things. It causes you to try things for good or for bad. And so it's kind of weird. There was a movement in the early 70s to focus on self-esteem exclusively because it was thought that children, when they felt good about themselves, they would have better outcomes. It actually turns out that self-esteem just gives you more initiative and a more inflated sense of self. And it turns out that you're going to see a lot of times people in prison have really high self-esteem. They think too much of themselves. So people with high self-esteem have greater initiative. They're willing to try things, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. And you know what? Sometimes people with high self-esteem think they can bully or push other people around. So really, what I want you to work on, rather than building your child's self-confidence in comparison to self-esteem. Wow. You know, when you start throwing all those self terms around, it 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 gets a little confusing. Confidence, I would say confidence is a good thing. Learning, wow, that's a tough question. Self-confidence, if self to the degree that self-confidence is the same as self-esteem, I would say it's problematic. Being willing to try things and being okay with failing, knowing you're still a good person even if you fail. If that is self-confidence, then that is a good thing. Okay? Where we get into trouble with self-esteem is when somebody is told to ignore the negative and focus only on the positive. Okay? Unfortunately, and this goes back again to this idea of Erik Erikson. You need to understand the difference between doing something well and doing something poorly. You need to understand that, and you need to be okay with the fact that sometimes you're not always good at everything. And so, Victory, I would say you need to become confident in learning that I'm good at some things, and it's okay that I'm not good at some things. That's self-confidence. Self-esteem is I'm good at everything, right? And so you want your child to feel good, but this self-esteem can sometimes get out of hand. You know, it's sort of weird that I should mention that. Did you know that all of us are a little bit deluded about our abilities? There's this self-illusion that all of us have. We all think of ourselves as a little bit better than average. It's called the above average effect. If you ask 100 people, how good looking are you? Most of them will say, I'm above average. If you ask 100 people, how smart are you? Most of them will say, I'm above average. If you ask most people, how good a driver are you? Almost everybody's going to say, I'm better than average. Everybody thinks they're better than average. Statistically speaking, though, 50% of you are below average. But everybody seems to think that they're better than average. This is, oh my God. Hold on, folks. It looks like I've got a jackass online here. Give me a moment to get rid of this person and hide user on this channel. Go away, dating site. I apologize for that. I'm important enough to have porn people chasing me now. I apologize. So, it is actually, and it turns out, here's the crazy thing at Victory, it turns out that if you compare the self-evaluations of people who are clinically depressed with the self-evaluations of people who are not clinically depressed, what you're going to find is that clinically depressed people have actually more accurate views than people who are not clinically depressed. So we actually think it's a little healthy to be a little bit deluded about your abilities, to think you're a little better than normal, but you can let it get out of hand and then it becomes problematic. Now, you know what? A more important thing to think about, self-efficacy and self-regulation, right? Instead of focusing, I want my child to just love themselves. Instead, I want my child to think they are powerful and that they can control themselves, okay? Rather than thinking I'm a great person and just saying, oh, I love Chris. Instead, I want to say, Chris is a strong person who can do what he wants. That's self-efficacy. Chris is a person who can control himself. That's self-regulation. More important, in my opinion, than developing your child to have high self-esteem, you want them to have a sense of high self-efficacy and self-regulation. Okay? Exactly. It's a very thin line. I like the way Ronrico says. There's a thin line between being confident and being deluded about yourself. And unfortunately, travel ball parents, helicopter parents, all of these other parents, sometimes they are so interested in maintaining their kids' sense of high self-esteem that they get in there and they fight battles for their kids. And what they're doing is, instead of helping their child develop, what they're doing is they are giving themselves a diluted sense of self, and B, they're actually showing their child that their child can't do anything on their own. So helicopter parents, in my opinion, helicopter parents can be problematic because they don't allow the child to develop self-regulation abilities and self-efficacy abilities, okay? Now, what is self-efficacy? Self-efficacy is a very specific belief that you can engage in a course of behavior to achieve an outcome. Whereas self-esteem is global, self-efficacy is very specific. What kind of student are you? I am a good student. What kind of high self-esteem is the same as? They are quite similar. They are quite similar. I'm going to say that self-esteem is just loving yourself, whereas self-confidence is on the way to self-efficacy, which is I love myself and I can do this. Okay? Self-efficacy is a belief that you have about yourself that you can do certain things. What kind of an athlete am I? I am a good athlete. I have high athletic efficacy. What kind of a teacher am I? Or what kind of an academic am I? I am a very strong academic. I have high academic self-efficacy. What kind of a husband am I? I am a good husband. I can do that. I have high marital self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is a specific belief that you have in your ability to achieve an outcome. How many of you have friends that don't go to school because they're like, you know what, I can never pass college anyhow? Have you ever heard a person that says, I'm not going to learn a language because there's no way, I'm too stupid to learn a language. I'm too this to learn a language. I can't learn how to snowboard. That is too hard for me. These are people with low self-efficacy. Self-esteem is your belief that I'm a good person. Self-efficacy is I can do that. Okay? And so what I think is a better orientation for you to develop in your child, rather than focus on I'm a good person, I think you should focus on I can do this. All right? Now, it is a learned context-dependent skill that develops as a result of 4 things. How do I help my child develop self-efficacy? Number 1, you need to give them chances where they can do it. A lot of parents will do stuff for their child. They never let their child do anything. If you don't let your child challenge themselves and do something and accomplish something, they're not going to develop a sense of self-efficacy. So let your child put the dishes up. Let your child try to fold the clothes. Let your child do things and put them into situations where they can be challenged and then they can succeed. All right? So mastery experiences. The second thing is focusing a child's attention on other children who are already doing what you want them to do. So your child, I remember when I learned to swim, I went to swim classes as a 7-year-old. I was afraid to dive in the pool, right? You know how they teach you how to dive? You put your hands like this, you stand at the edge of the pool, and they tell you just fall over and you learn how to dive. I was so afraid to learn. But when I watched all the other 7-year-olds in the class dive into the pool, I got up the courage and I said, you know what? If all 7 of them can do it, I can do it too. So it's important that you make sure that you allow your child to see other people doing what you want your child to do so that they can see that it can be done. All right? Yes. All right. I'm going to stop and answer a couple of questions that are great. Imani, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Yes, yes, yes. When we talk about growth mindset, versus fixed mindset, they're talking about something related to your feelings of self-efficacy and putting yourself into that change where I can get better and I should get better. So a self-esteem is more associated with extremes of self-esteem. Self-esteem can be associated with aggressive behavior. Now, I don't want to totally throw self-esteem under the bus. You need to feel good about yourself because it's better to feel good than to feel bad about yourself. But what I'm saying is, don't let the self-esteem, the drive for self-esteem, run amok. Don't let it become more important than teaching your child how to accept and learn from real feedback. Okay? Good question. Wow, your questions are absolutely spectacular today, as always. Exaggerated self. Yeah, being a maniac. Exactly, Amani. Fantastic. So we've got these things. How do I develop a sense of self-efficacy? Well, give your kid a chance to do things. Give your kid a chance to do things where they can succeed. Help them, make sure they see other kids doing the things you want them to learn how to do. Now, and encourage your children by telling them that they can do things. Now, here's the most important thing. Encouraging your child positively is helpful, and that will help your child develop high self-efficacy. But the one way you can absolutely destroy your kids' self-efficacy is by persuading them the opposite way. And so when they talk about verbal persuasion, ridiculing your child, making fun of your child, laughing at your child, making your child feel bad about failure is actually the surest way to help them not develop verbal persuasion. So, one discouraging response is more important than 10 encouraging responses. Does that make sense? So we want to give our kid the chance to be successful, where they can succeed and sometimes fail. We want to put them in situations where they can watch other children doing the things that they want to do. And we want to tell them, Johnny, you can do what those other kids are doing. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to ridicule them when they do try and fail. And a lot of times your child, when they're put into into these new situations, they're going to get really, really nervous and anxious. And one of the things that people do when they evaluate whether or not they can or can't do something is they look at how they feel. And they interpret their own emotions as proof that they can or can't do something. So if you ask me to swim and I get freaked out when I get to the pool, I'm going to take my own terror as proof that I can't swim. So what you need to do is to help your child calm themselves when they get into situations where they feel challenged. And so what I want you to do is to tell your child you love them, give them a warm cuddle, make them feel good so that they have a sense of self-esteem. But you know what? Help them learn how to be realistically good in thinking in things and help them to develop the understanding that they are good at different things. This ability is self-efficacy. And one of the things that I spend most of my time here in community college doing is building up the academic efficacy of students who have had theirs torn down. I can't tell you how many people I meet who didn't go to college because they had bad experiences in high school. And now they're 30 and 35-year-old students coming back to school. Or I get students that decided not to go to college out of high school because they failed this class or that class and had a teacher tell them they were bad. And what I do most of the time is I spend my time trying to get you freshmen to believe that you really can be an academic. And I swear to God, I know you're a freshman and this seems hard and you're making C's and maybe D's occasionally. But you know what? I did the same thing. I struggled and you can struggle. And one of the things that I have to do here in Wake Tech is help build up the academic efficacy of students who've had theirs torn down for the last 12 years. I know, and I wish my dad had known some of these things. And honestly, I knew these things, and I still didn't do a perfect job as a father myself, Nicole, right? Now, that's self-efficacy. Another important thing that you want to teach your child is how to regulate their emotions, the deliberate efforts to manage one's behavior, emotions, and thoughts. It is an important quality of emotional development and should arise during this period. It is linked to your prefrontal cortex development. However, there is a critical period for developing emotional control. You got to work on it when the kids are in early childhood so that by the time they get to school, they're able to control their emotions. What are some outcomes associated with better self-regulation? Your kid's going to do better in school. So they're going to get higher math and reading achievement because they're not going to be angry. They're going to take the feedback. They're going to control their emotions. They're going to be better students. So their achievement scores are going to be higher. Kids who can't control their emotion tend to act out and do things that are bad. They get into trouble. Okay? Now, we find that especially for kids that maybe grow up in poor homes, being able to control your emotions is a protective factor against some of the negative things that are associated with low socioeconomic status. And because people control their behavior and emotions, they're going to experience less stress. They're going to engage in less negative behaviors like drug and alcohol abuse, which are sometimes used to control unconstrained emotions. And they're going to live a longer life. Dude, it is so important for you to teach your children to control their emotions. And again, we talked about emotional coaching. Help your 2-year-old identify the emotions that they're feeling. Teach your children strategies so that they can self-soothe themselves and come down from their negative emotions and maintain a sort of an even keel. You know, I will give you a bit of gossip. We actually had someone here at Wake Tech that wound up throwing a fit and showing their butt in a professional meeting and actually got fired because they had an emotional outburst and said some things that they shouldn't have said. If you've ever seen those people at work that throw fits, that get into arguments with coworkers, they can't control their emotions. And what you're going to see is most of the failures that you're going to see in adulthood are going to be people who have trouble controlling their emotions. Now, I don't say this because I'm the Buddha and because my emotions are controlled. I have a lot of difficulty controlling my emotions. It's something that I have to work on every day as an adult. And I promise you that my career has been hurt more than once because of my inability to regulate my emotions. I promise. I've said things and I've done things. Haven't gotten myself fired yet, but I have definitely helped hurt myself professionally because I haven't controlled my emotions. So, what should we be looking for with children? Yeah, you want them to feel good about themselves and have a sense of self-esteem, but really, you want them to feel like they can do things and that they're competent to do things, and you want them to be able to I can't point to it. You want them to be able to control their emotions. Okay. Now, your book talks about intervention programs that have been used to help children develop emotional control. One that they mention is Second Step, which actually has sort of programs based upon kids' age. So for the pre-K kids, they teach them how to pay attention and to control themselves and sit down and be quiet so they can focus, because that's a great academic skill. From K through 5th grade, they work with these children on regulating your emotions, learning how to make friends, and learning how to solve interpersonal problems that may occur with your friends. And then in 6th through 8th, grades, starting in puberty in middle school, they're going to teach these kids how to deal with stressful environments, because inability to deal with stress can also affect your emotional functioning, and how to make decisions. When we say decision making, I'm saying learning how to make the right decision, not the one based upon your angry emotion. right? Sometimes we control our emotions out of fears. Um, in a negative way, yes, and I'm again like self-esteem. I guess anything can be done overboard. I'm not talking about stifling your fears, but I'm talking about learning when it's appropriate to demonstrate your fears. And then when we're in a safe place, we blow up. But you know what? Here's the deal, Imani. I would argue that learning how to do that is not actually bad, but that's a good thing, right? I can't tell you how many times I've had bosses, or more importantly, students say things and do things that make me so mad. But you know what? If I grab you by the shoulders, Imani, and shake you in class and say, that is a stupid thing to do, I can't believe you would do that, I'll get myself fired because you're not allowed to grab and shake students. So I go home and I kick a garbage can. Yeah, I blew up, but I at least learned how to channel my emotion to the right area. Maybe, Imani? I don't know. I don't know. So here's the deal. So this emotional training in in fantastic fashion. Absolutely, dude. Sometimes you have to let it all out. That's one emotional control strategy. Okay. Now, we talk about these programs that are organized, but really, do you need to send your kid to a program at school to do this? Or are there ways in which you could do this at home, right? So rather than rely on your school to give your kid emotional control, I'm going to invite each and every one of you parents. I'm going to challenge each and every one of you parents to work on these skills. Teach your child how to be self-aware, aware of the emotions that they're feeling, how to manage these emotions, how to understand other people's emotions and be aware of how other people are responding to your emotions to develop this social awareness. Teach your child how to share, how to give other kids a turn, how to ask another child, how to help another child who is hurting or who is struggling, how to teach your child how to think through things and make the right decision. These are things that, although there are programs and that should help, teach these things to your children on their own. Now, one of the things that you're going to find in today's culture wars is that there are a lot of people who think that we should take this social emotional training out of schools. Some of your conservatives say, you know, we should spend time focusing on academic stuff in schools. And we should take social stuff out of school. In a sense, they're right because this stuff should be getting taught at home. On the other hand, they're wrong because the school should be reinforcing this as well. I will tell you, it's if you rely on the school to train your child's social emotional functioning, your child is not going to develop into a happy, healthy adult. You need to take some responsibility and help your child develop emotional control and self-efficacy and kindness on their own. Because I know my child's boundaries and mine. We have different schemas. Nice victory. But the goal should be, and you know, don't get blinders about my child must act this exact way in this exact situation. But just remember, you should always be thinking about making your child feel powerful and making your child feel powerful in controlling their own emotional responses. I like the way you're talking, Victory. It sounds like you're probably already a good parent. Okay. You know, we're running out of time, so I just want to briefly mention this guy, Lawrence Kohlberg, beneath me. He's a guy who thought about how we develop our moral abilities, right? So all of us have a sense of morality. And he sat down and he was a philosopher actually, and spent his time thinking about philosophy. And he argued that people's moral development goes through stages just like Piaget's cognitive development. And he argues that our lack of logical abilities and lack of of abstract thinking affects our ability to reason morally. And he was interested in moral reasoning, your ability to think about right and wrong. Different from doing right and wrong, but thinking about right and wrong. And he argued that if you look at like your little pre-operation, not your pre-operational children that don't have logical abilities yet, you're going to notice that their moral reasoning is going to be really more related as to whether or not mama sees them and they get in trouble. They're going to be what we call pre-conventional moral reasoners. If you'll notice, kids in this particular age that we're talking about right now, middle and let's say middle and late childhood, they're going to be very conventional moral reasoners. They're going to be the ones that know there are rules and we must follow the rules. Okay? But you folks are adults, and I would argue that we sometimes reason morally, and we say, you know what, sometimes laws are wrong, and sometimes people's rights and people's fundamental values are more important than laws. And we are what he would call post-conventional moral reasoners. So one way to think about moral reasoning is, you know, you can talk about right and wrong and truth and justice to your 3-year-old, but your 3-year-old's really thinking about, am I going to get caught taking this cookie? Okay. When you're talking to your 7, 8, 9-year-olds, you need to really focus on the fact that there are rules, and rules are an agreement among people for behavior, and we need to follow these conventional rules. And then as your child gets older, we need to focus on the idea that sometimes right and wrong is a complex thing, and maybe sometimes we need to think about the rules critically. Okay, now the critiques of his theory is that he focused on how we think about morality rather than being moral people. Some people say, hey, they're two very different things, and we're not going to focus on it, but some of his theories are said to be biased against female moral reasoning. I don't have time to talk about this, but I do want you to be familiar with children's sharing ability. So 4-year-olds, they will share if they're encouraged, but they don't love it. Okay, 6 and 7-year-old kids definitely know what fair is, but fair to them means equal for everybody. And you folks as adults know that sometimes fair means I get more than you or you get more than me. And so look at sharing on your own and be familiar with that for this week's lecture. Okay, I have overrun my time because I spent too much time giving you my opinion about self-esteem and self-efficacy. But I hope you appreciated this discussion. Does anybody have any questions? Remember this week on that 25-point short answer question, I want you to tell me about this, the self abilities of a 1-year-old. Man, they don't really have a sense of self. 2 to 5, they have a sense of self, but it's concrete, positive, not really logical, and not based on the fact that we are social animals. And as children move into middle and late childhood, they're going to develop a social self that is more objective, more based on reality and real comparison, and relates to emotional qualities as well as physical abilities. All right, so over the course of this semester, I want us to not only think about these things each chapter, but think about the trajectory that these things are developing as we get older. Okay? Folks, I want to thank everybody for coming. We had 7 people at our height, and 5 people stayed here through the whole lecture, which is amazing. I just want to thank you very much for your motivation and your desire to come here to these lectures. I really, really appreciate your professionalism as students. Hey, no webinar this week, but the discussion board is due Thursday night at 11:59 p.m. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and log off. I look forward to seeing you Thursday morning at 10. Do 4-year-olds understand fairness? Boy, they are at the beginnings of fairness. This is when you need to start working on fairness, Victory. Your 3-year-old is it really needs to be coached right then. This is when they're starting to develop that. Fantastic question. Your 5 and 6 year old definitely are going to begin to understand fair and talk about it. But 3 and 4 is when that ability you should be focusing on that ability. Great question, Victory. Great question. All right, folks, take care, and I will see you next week. Bye. I'll see you Thursday. Bye.